Record. So welcome to this 45-minute session where I'm going to show you how the lab profile works. Lovely to see some familiar faces, and also very nice to see a few new faces. I'm not going to take a lot of questions as I go along. I'm as far as possible going to do this with minimal breaks, so you'll see the whole process the way that I do a lab profile interview. If you have questions, do please stick them in the chat box as we go along, and then when I get to the end of the session, I'll run through the chat box and answer whatever questions you've got. Okay, so let me just make a little adjustment to the screen. There we go. So I want to introduce you to my volunteer. This is Jane. Now, some of you were in the session that I did a few weeks ago, which was kind of, how to read people using the lab profile. And if you were there, you might remember at the end of the session, I said, if you'd like to talk some more, just stick your details in the chat box and we'll have a conversation. And Jane was the first person that did that. And so when we had our conversation, we were talking about, what we could do with the lab profile and so on. And I thought, oh, I'll just sound Jane out about this. And said, I'm thinking I might do another webinar where I actually demonstrate the profile with a volunteer. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm waiting for her to say, oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I'd be interested to watch that. But no. She said, oh, yeah, I'll volunteer for that. So here we are. So I have teed up my volunteer in advance. But I want you to know that I haven't primed Jane in any way. And Jane, would you like a moment just to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about you and what you do?
Oh, okay. So I'm Jane Bailham. I'm from a company called Reward Risk Management, and I help companies to work out the best way of paying their staff, what their salaries look like, what sort of benefits they should offer, generally what a pay structure might be for their organisation, generally getting them to the position where they're retaining staff through getting their salaries right rather than losing them all the time. I am experienced in other areas of HR, so I do know a little bit about profiling, but the lab is new to me, so I'm looking forward to this.
Excellent, thank you. And it's always nice to give people a little commercial break in reward in recompense for helping me out with this kind of thing. So I think it's probably time to get started, unless anybody's got any burning questions before I begin. Okay, good. So behind the scenes, I've got Magic Mary, who is now going to hopefully pin the two of us to the screen so that you can see us side by side. There we go. Thank you, Mary. Well done. And the other thing that you might be interested to know is I'm taking notes while I'm doing this on this single sheet of paper. And I will show you what it looks like at the end. So I'm not scribbling lots of words down. All I'm doing is sort of minimal note taking. Okay, so one of the things that is key to the lab profile that makes it different from personality profiling is that we are going to focus on a particular context. So this is an instrument that recognizes that people are different in different parts of their lives. So, we all know that person who's really organized and punctual when they're at work. And then in their personal life, they can be much more relaxed, a bit untidy, maybe, don't always turn up on time for things and so on. Because people are different depending on the situation that they find themselves in. So the principal context that I use the lab profile in is the work context. So I'm going to do that general work context today with you, Jane, because I think that's probably the thing that most people are going to find interesting. For anybody who is keen to see how it might work in a different context, if you go onto the Brilliant Minds website, and we can put the link into the chat for this towards the end of the session. There's a video on the lab profile training page of me doing a profile with one of my team in a very different kind of context. So you can see how it works in different situations. Okay, so Jane, first of all, first question, what's important to you about your work?
Yeah, giving the best that I can the clients, so giving them going above and beyond to give them the answers that they need and ensure that they can make really good decisions.
Mhm. Okay. And what else is important to you in your work?
Variety, from a personal perspective,
Mhm.
and also keeping track and understanding what's new and different. So how things are progressing, what's changing,
Yeah.
and I guess knowing that the clients value what I do.
Mhm. Mm. Okay, good. So if I may, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper on a couple of these. So first of all, tell me, why is it important to you to give the best you can?
Oh gosh. Partly it's in my nature. I think it's just who I am.
Yeah.
But partly it's because I think if you're going to manage a successful business, you have to do more than just deliver the business. You have to be giving your clients, a really, really good service.
Mhm.
But I think, from the who I am perspective, it's my belief is that if somebody's paying you for something, you've got to give the best you can within the realms of what they're paying.
Mhm.
And, it's got to be value for money.
Okay. And why is value for money important in this context?
I Quite a lot of the clients that I work with are charity and not for profit, but I think everybody looks at something from their perspective of, have I received value for money? So I look, when I buy something or a service or even an object, if I think I've got good value for money out of it, then I'll go away satisfied. But if I don't think I've got good value for money, A, I'm probably never going to use them again, and B, the dissatisfaction of having to go elsewhere to get the job finished or get what I need
Yeah.
is really frustrating. So I'm not in the business really of frustrating people if I can help it.
I'm sure. Yes. Thank you. And if you could tell me a little bit more about, why is variety important to you?
Butterfly. No, I'm not really. I think I've worked for a long time. I'm not telling you my age, but I've worked for a long time, and I've done jobs where it's the same thing every day. And from my perspective, I don't handle that well. I know that as I prefer to have something different on a daily basis to do. And as a consultant, for me, one of the benefits of being a consultant is different clients make things different. When I worked in house, I went through the same terms and conditions review of the organisation I worked for 5 years before I said, I'm not doing this again. It's kind of that sort of, it
Yeah.
things are the same all the time. You get stale, you get bored, you don't deliver your best.
Mhm. Yeah. Right. Thank you very much. So, doing the kind of work that you do, how do you know when you've done a good job?
Uh, Partly a smile on the client's face, hopefully.
Mhm.
Getting good feedback from the clients, knowing that they're able to make a decision, or I put them in a position where they feel they're comfortable, but also when they don't actually need to come to me for hand holding all
Mm.
the time. And I
Yeah.
think I know they say with consultancy that you want clients to depend on you, but I want them to depend on me for the information. I
Mhm.
don't want them to depend on me for their decision making. I want them to be confident that they've got the information they need to make a decision.
Mhm. Mhm. So why did you choose this particular area of work?
Yeah, I fell into it. I worked in HR and had done so for a number of years when somebody in the HR team found out I could use Excel, or as it was at the time, Lotus 123. That's showing my age, but there you go. And when they found out I could do that, I suddenly got roped into the reward team to help do a pay review because there are loads of spreadsheets needed to get sent out. And that was it, really. Once the reward director found out that that's what I could do, she wasn't letting me go back into ordinary HR again. So,
Right.
yeah, and it was kind of, I got hooked on it because it was my thing for numbers,
Mhm.
and also stayed within the HR arena, which I find really fascinating. So I'm able to kind of marry the two,
Yeah.
which I really like.
Mm. Mm. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Okay. So you mentioned wanting to keep up to date with what's new and different and so on. If you compare your work last year and this year, what's the relationship?
Oh, the relation. Well, I think everybody's still grappling with the same issues. The issues don't really go away. They change a little bit. The focus of them changes a bit, but the underlying issues are still the same. And when you're working with things like salaries, everybody goes to work to be paid.
Yeah.
And but the motivation behind it changes. So the relationship is the change in the motivation, I think, around why people go to work, what they're expecting from work. And I think so there's a lot of process stuff that's underlying it that stays pretty much the same, but it's the analysis and then the interpretation of how it's changed it makes things different.
Interesting. And so how does that affect what you're actually doing day to day?
Yeah, well, the process stuff's great. I've got people to do that for me. No, I still get my hands dirty. I still love doing it. But the understanding that the constantly reviewing what's changing in terms of what does engagement mean, what does motivation mean, how are organizations doing that constant research piece that you're doing, reading articles, taking part and understanding what's going on in the way that people employ people, those and the reasons that they do, that sort of thing. It's all about that, just keeping on top of it and understanding and looking at different sources and perspectives, get a bigger picture.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so for those of you watching, I can see one or two people taking notes, which is lovely. So that's the first half of the profile. So those questions give me insights into Jane's motivation triggers. And then the remaining questions look at her productivity patterns. Okay. So Jane, I'm going to change tack a little bit now. We've talked sort of generally about you and your work. I'd like to now, if you will, get you to give me some specific examples of things that you've experienced. So first up, can you tell me about a work situation that caused you some trouble?
Wow.
It doesn't have to be the worst thing that ever happened, just an example of something that was difficult.
Yeah, so I've been doing a piece of work with a client. They're struggling with understanding what a salary might look like, but there's not really any data around the job role. It's a very unique, very specific job role. There's not really any data that's giving a pattern to show. So when we try and pull together what might look like a sensible salary range, it's very broad. And so understanding what's going on behind that and really digging into it has been quite difficult because there's just not enough evidence to support what we're saying. So we're having to use a lot of judgment, which will make clear is that in our judgment, in our view, or in my judgment, in my view, this is what the situation is. It felt awkward going back to the client and saying, well, actually, there's no real pattern to this. Now we've assessed all of the data. There's no real pattern. I can't make a recommendation to you that says you want to pay between here and here because the between here and here is this big. And so we can't really. What we would say is if they accept the job offer, you've got it right. And that when sometimes clients are looking for you to give them a solution, but all you're giving them is an insight to what the solution, that either there is no solution or what the solution might be. I find that really difficult to judge with, to work with.
Right, thank you. And now if we could go to sort of the other end of the spectrum, tell me about a work situation that fulfilled all those things you said earlier that are really important to you. So where you knew that you were giving the best that you could, in fact, going above and beyond for your client, you were getting variety, you're getting the opportunity to kind of, stay up to date with what's new and different and really know that you were giving good value into your clients. Can you think of a time when all of that came together for you?
So I just literally had a conversation with a client this morning looking for some additional work, but it started off a piece of work that I did for them nearly 3 years ago, where they were looking for somebody to talk to them about some salary benchmarking work. And it was just a very simple piece of salary benchmarking or straightforward piece of salary benchmarking. But out of it, we realized that there was so much going on behind the scenes that would put them in a position if they try to implement anything with the salary benchmarking, it wasn't going to be a solution in either short or long term. It was just going to shut half a dozen people up for now and leave them with 942 people who weren't happy. So there was a realization there was a lot going on behind the business, and so worked with them to do other pieces of work around different things like, what do their pay structure look like, what does their job roles look like. Their job descriptions were everywhere, all over the place. So there was no consistency in how they communicated stuff about what it looked like. There was we had focus groups with staff, we had strategy meetings with executives. I'm saying we mostly me. I was me and the HR director. We did loads of research and came up with lots of different options about how things might be taken forward. We reviewed and assessed again what options would work, and we spoke to trade unions. So it was all a real, what's the word I'm looking for, mix up of doing all sorts of different things that are in the reward stream, doing them all at the same time, and trying at the end of it to pull them all together so that we could say, right, there you are, you can take it forward now, here you go, this is what we've got, your proposal for your reward structure, your outcomes of your salary benchmarking, and list it all and say, this is everything you've got now to start moving forward. And by the way, here's a spreadsheet, have fun playing with it, put your percentage in there, put your outcomes there.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. And when you look back on that now, what did you particularly like about it?
That variety. I think it was about being involved at every level. So talking to the guy on the shop floor right the way through to the CEO and the board, and just working with people at all levels and pulling together all of the miscommunications and things that people were having, and being the person who was translating all of this stuff into a tangible that they could take forward. I think there was when sometimes when you, as a consultant, when you go in, the biggest issue is communication.
Yeah.
And you can tell somebody 1,000 times, but until it goes like that, it's not communication.
Yes, yeah, I'm familiar with that one. Okay, that's good. Thank you. We're doing well here.
Thank you.
So, what's a good way for you, Jane, to increase your success in your work?
I think it's more of the same. I think it's more involvement with clients, getting actually in with the clients and being part of what they do. I am a collaborative person. I know that in myself. But I think it's I think that's, for me, it's actually being in there and being part of it rather than just being sat on the outside feeding information in. It's about all the other information that you can get if you are part of it, that helps you deal with the bigger picture and give a fuller, more strategic outlook rather than just here's the answer.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, good. And what's a good way for someone else to increase success in their work?
Oh gosh, I think it depends what they're looking for out of their success, because everybody's different. But I think having evidence of that success, of past successes, looking and researching and understanding where you want to go next and what you want to do to be different, and generally articulating that if you can. Yeah. I think quite often people's success is limited by their inability to articulate what they want next.
Yeah.
And that comes down to things like, performance development meetings, one person with their boss, or a business owner strategizing what they want to do. It's that sort of, where am I going? What am I looking for?
Good.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, you're making lots of sense, Jane.
You're smiling in the background. So I think I'm making sense.
So just 2 questions left. In your line of work, you probably meet a lot of people and you work alongside a lot of people who don't actually report to you. So this next question is just about, you know, your impressions of other people, and it would be somebody, keep somebody in mind who's kind of an equal of yours, you know, somebody that you would regard as a peer. Tell me, how do you know that someone else is good at their job?
Oh gosh, well, there's a number of different ways. There's the outcomes that they deliver.
Yeah.
What they actually done that, you know, people are lauding them for, or celebrating that they've done. The engagement that they get from other people in what they've done. So I think that's some sort of visibility of their success. My own sense of the value of what they've done, I guess, is part of it, you know, in terms of, are they doing something valuable? And you can be very good at a job, but it actually deliver nothing. That's not really very helpful, or deliver the wrong thing. Yeah.
So if we're thinking about someone that you kind of meet in your extended network,
yeah,
how do you make your mind up about those sorts of things? Do you have to kind of see them in action, or would it be about having a conversation with them, or hearing what somebody else said about them? Would you want to read something they'd written?
Oh gosh, all of the above. I'm a bit of I know that I'm one of those people who's evidence-based.
Okay. So what sort of evidence do you need?
So I think it's a combination of things. You know, I quite often want to, you know, do other people value them? Do other people think they're, you know, worth your effort? Is one of the things. But I think sometimes I'm a great believer in my instinctual. When I meet somebody, do or don't I like them? I've been proved right often enough to trust my own instinct about the fact that sometimes people are not as good as they say they are. And or are not as genuine as you want them to be. So, you know, come across those instances. So yeah, but sometimes it's about seeing the work they've done for other people, or hearing about the work they've done for other people, that makes you think, well, yeah, they're great. Other people are telling me they're great.
Yeah. So if somebody else told you that somebody was really good at what they do, would that be enough for you to be convinced? No. Okay. So for you to be convinced,
I need to talk to them to get a sense. I need to feel confident in what they're telling me, that the individual's telling me to believe it. And I guess it needs to come from more than one source as well. Because if I get it from a variety of sources that somebody is good, then, you know, I feel more confident that, and that's my own assessment. Then
So the thing I'm most interested in now is which channel do you need to get that in for you to be really convinced? So, you know, you said you need to talk to somebody. So if you had the chance to have a chat with them, you know, in person, and hear from them directly how good they were, could you be convinced as a result of that? Or would you?
Not always.
Okay, right. Okay. So, but if they were really good, could you be convinced?
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
so.
if somebody isn't that good, they're not going to convince you. But if somebody is really good,
I guess I question what I'm hearing. I'll do some research on it as well to go out and find out what other people are saying about something that they're doing, and you know, what it is that they do, and find out if I agree. Research is a big thing for me. I'm laughing at myself when I'm saying this, because the research comes up so often.
Yeah, there's a consistent pattern here, isn't there? It's great. Okay, so how many times would you have to have a conversation with somebody before you were completely convinced that they were good at what they do?
Probably 2 or 3. I'd need to build that relationship and know and understand that, you know, what I'm saying, how does it come across when I talk to them? Am I feeling that what they're saying is relevant?
Yeah. So if I press you, is it 2 or is it 3?
Depends on the individual.
Okay, so
depends if I come away after the second meeting with some questions still.
Okay, yeah. So if you think about somebody that you met who really is good at what they do, Were 2 conversations enough for you, or did you really need a third to be completely convinced?
I'm probably the third time round first.
Brilliant. Okay.
Talk about pressure.
I bet you've never been asked that before, have you?
No, ever.
Okay. So thank you very much. That's the end of the question phase. I'm going to talk to everybody on screen for a moment, and then I will I'll do some off the top of my head feedback for you about what it's telling me. Yeah. So
feedback.
It's all good. It's all good. So I'm just looking at the time here. So that's taken me just about 25 minutes to do that. Yeah. Now, if you're used to other profiling tools, I know for a lot of people, then, you're familiar with the idea of people go online and do a questionnaire. And, for you as the coach, as the workshop facilitator or whatever, that doesn't take any of your time. You send them the link and they go off and do it. What I know from a lot of people I've worked with is that many people find those sorts of online questionnaires actually quite tough to engage with. The first 10 questions are quite fun. And then there comes a point when you think, oh, how many more of these? So one of the reasons why I really like the lab profile is that it doesn't take very long. And it's really easy for the person that is being profiled, because all they have to do is answer questions. And as you've seen, they're quite interesting questions. They often get people to sort of, start thinking about things they might not have really reviewed about themselves before. And so, it usually makes for quite an interesting conversation, which, again, is a bonus. And the other thing is that I'm not asking for any self-perception. So all of the questions that I've asked are designed to illuminate a particular pattern in the lab profile. And it's in the way that Jane answers the question that tells me what I'm listening for. So again, even with people who are familiar with the lab profile, it's quite hard to deliberately show yourself in a particular light in this kind of profiling. Whereas if you've done lots of personality profiles and you're faced with a questionnaire, it is actually quite easy to choose which version of yourself you want to show. And I think this is probably more accurate because of that, because it's done by, quote, expert interviewer. And yes, that's me in this case, but it could be you, after only a couple of days training. The training program takes 3 days, and then, you'd be able to do this. So it's obviously, with all skills, it gets easier with time, but it's something that's relatively easy to learn to do. So let me have a little look at your profile, Jane. And so before I start this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Jane what I think is, this is insights into her profile. But I'm working on the basis of it's my best guess, and I'm going to check it out with Jane. And so, I'm watching quite closely that if she's nodding and smiling, I'm thinking, yes, I've got this right. And if she's just sort of giving me that polite face, then I might need to ask some extra questions and see if there's something else that I've missed. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So one of the things that's jumping out here is you talked a lot about variety and difference. So it's important to you in your work that there is an opportunity to do things that you haven't done before. And I think it's also important that you have multiple ways of achieving the same thing, depending on the circumstances. Okay, good. And I think that you're at your most motivated when you've got a really clear goal to work towards. You've got clarity about which problems need to be solved to get there. And you know how to do it. But I think you're probably most motivated when it's something that you haven't done in quite this way before. Is that fair? Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So, that shows really why you're thriving doing the business that you do, because it's tapping into all those strengths and the way that you get motivated to do your job. Yeah. And the other piece on motivation here is some people are really motivated by feedback from others. You know, that as soon as somebody says, "Oh, you've done really well there, I'm really grateful," you know, that sort of gives you a little sort of lift that can last for quite a long period of time. For other people, that's less important, and it's more about their own standards. So if I've done the job to the best of my ability, then, you know, that's the thing that matters. And I think you have a nice blend of those two. Is that you've got your own standards and you will work to those standards. And at the same time, you're interested in what other people think and what the client's telling you. And you won't really think that you've done the best job you could unless the client's happy. Okay, good. So what else am I getting from this? You said that you like to work collaboratively, and that's definitely coming over. I think, though, what really works for you is when there is clarity about who's doing what. So, you know, if you're working on your own, that's fine. But if you're working with other people, then it's really good for you to know, I'm doing this bit and you're doing that bit, and this is how they're going to fit together. Yeah, okay, she's nodding. That's good. And you have a profile of a leader, somebody that, you know, you're very happy to point.
I'll take it.
Yeah, you know, you're happy to point the way for other people and to give people advice and opinions, which, of course, doing the work that you do, we could have predicted that if you weren't comfortable saying to people, this is what I think you should be doing, then you probably wouldn't
be a consultant.
Yeah. And what else is coming out? Okay, so then the final piece that we're talking about convincers. This is what it takes for you to go from, yeah, I like that, to I'm going to do something about it. And what this, you know, you said probably 3 times. So what that suggests is that when you make a choice about something, and that, you know, that might be, it might be like, you know, buying a book or engaging with a new client, or, you know, it could be all sorts of different places where you make decisions in your working life, that you won't usually take action after one contact. So, you know, well, let's talk. No, you and I were talking about, you might like to come and do the training program. You're not the person who's going to sign up on the basis of one conversation. You know, you're going to want to explore it more, and then you're going to come back for a 3rd time probably before you feel really convinced that I've done what I need to do and I can say yes and move forward. Yeah, does that sound like you?
Yeah, it does. Jill's probably laughing in the background.
You know, you see this in lots of different places. You know, commonly in the workplace, you'll see this by how many interviews does somebody want to do before they recruit a new member of staff. You know, and some people are very happy. Like, I've met this person once, they tick all the boxes. You know, I feel like we've had a good conversation. Yeah, let's go ahead. And there are other people who might say, yeah, I really like this person. Yeah, you know, I definitely think that, you know, they're a good candidate. They could do the job, but let's get them in for another interview. You know? And that's because they're not ready to say yes on the basis of one contact. Yeah. So in your case, 3 times is probably how many times you need before you're ready to take action on something. And, you know, all of these patterns are things that we do because they work for us. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong in any of them. What you will find, though, is having awareness of your own patterns can really help in terms of working at your best. So getting yourself motivated, and also then, you know, working in a way that makes you the most productive. So, you know, there's lots of other things that we could do with this in a coaching scenario. You know, we might then look at, so, you know, what might be some of the areas where you might find yourself a little bit out of step with other people. You know, and in your case, Jane, in corporate environments, you might find that there are fewer people who like change as much as you do. Yeah. And so when you're getting all enthusiastic about doing something that hasn't been done before, you might find there's a lot of people who are a bit like, oh, you know, are we sure about this? Yeah. And so those sorts of areas of awareness can be helpful in you know, how you not just get the best out of yourself, but also how you interact with other people, so that you can take them with you, and, you know, and rather than kind of you know, press the buttons that represent your differences. Okay, so first of all, before I go out to the whole assembled group, Jane, do you have any questions for me?
Not right now, but I guess I just need to think a little bit about what I've heard and what you've asked me, and
Sure,
before
yes.
I come up with any questions.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And what I will do is I will write this up for you and send it to you so that you've got a written version, not just the recording of the conversation. Okay, so so any questions, everybody else? Let's have a little look in the chat box. I'm gonna unpin you, James, so that you can come out of the spotlight. Right. There we go. Right. Okay. So I've got a couple of people saying they've had to go. That's a shame. Thank you for saying so. Jill, do you look for particular language patterns in analysing the questions? Yes, that's exactly it, Jill. That's what I'm doing. So each question is designed so that it gets a person talking about a specific aspect of their work, their life. And what I'm listening out for are the words that are associated with each of the specific patterns in the profile. So there are 14 patterns in the lab profile, and each one of them has language that goes with that pattern. So for example, if we're talking about it's known as decision factors, which is about how people respond to change. So if somebody likes change and they like difference and they like to do something new, then they will use that kind of language. They'll talk about something being new, something being fresh. They'll talk about the differences between things rather than the similarities. Although you remember that Jane talked about how, you know, there's processes and it's kind of the same issues all the time. People are battling with the same things. And then she gave this key little piece of information, which was, I have people that deal with all that. So she's delegated the things that are all about the day-to-day sameness so that she can get her teeth into the stuff where, you know, there's something different going on. I'm not saying this to embarrass you, Jane. It was just such a beautiful demonstration of the pattern. Yeah. So does that answer your question, Jill? Is that helpful? Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay. So a couple of things then before everybody has to rush off at 2 o'clock. One is, if you would like to have your lab profile done, I thought as a reward for being here, I will do these at discounted prices over the summer. I often have a bit more time in my calendar over the summer. So Mary, could you put the link in the chat box, please, as to where people can go to get that? So as you've seen, you know, it's a sort of, you know, half an hour asking the questions and then some feedback. When I do this sort of, you know, as almost like a coaching experience, it's like a 90-minute session where you can come and say, I'd like to have my lab profile because I want to learn some more about myself in this context, or I want to understand how I'm relating to, you know, some key workmates, or, you know, my boss is driving me crazy. Let's see if we can figure out why, that kind of thing. So that we'll look at a particular context. So if that's something that appeals to you, Mary will put that in the chat box so that you've got the link. I'll also put it in the email that you'll get after the session with the link to the recording. So if you want to have another look at the recording, go through it again, you've got that, but also put the link in so that if you want to have your lab profile done, then you can. And then the other thing that I probably ought to say more about is, if you want to learn to do this, the training course is coming up. I'm doing two, one in July, one in August. So it's the 5th to the 7th of July. That's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then in August, it's right at the end of the month. It's the 29th, 30th and 31st. And that's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you've got a bit of choice there. You know, hopefully, if you're interested in doing the training, you can fit that round whatever else is going on. So, you know, if you're interested in doing that, let me know. You can, you know, ping something in the chat box now, or you can email me later. And if you want to have a conversation about it, find out a bit more about the training, then, you know, I'm very happy to do that with you. I think, you know, for people who run small consulting firms, you know, people who are coaches and so on, one of the great advantages of the lab profile is that there's no cost per profile. So, if you're doing something like Myers-Briggs or Insights or DISC or something like that, every time you want somebody to do the profile, it costs you or it costs them. So the lab profile, there's no cost to you. It's about, how you value your time and your clients and what you want to charge for that. But it does give you a bit of flexibility in that you can also use it, just use part of it. So sometimes in a particular context, you might not need the whole profile. Sometimes you might think there's just a couple of questions that I want to ask from the profile that give me insight into what's happening, in a team or with a particular individual, or just to sort of get a handle on corporate culture. You don't always need to do the whole profile, which is one of the really useful, flexible things about it. And often you can get an idea of somebody's profile without actually asking these questions. Once you know the language that you're listening for, people will use that language in everyday conversation. So you can get a really good idea of somebody's profile without actually having to formally say to them, let's sit down and do your profile. So there's lots of different ways that you can use this. Okay, so we're almost at 2 o'clock. Any final questions? Take that as a no. Okay.
There's some in the chat.
And there's some more in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes, I should have scrolled down, shouldn't I? Do you use reactions, eye accessing cues, or just language? So thank you for the question, Rob. It's the language and behavior profile. So mostly we're paying attention to language. Before I used Zoom all the time, I used to quite often do this kind of profiling over the phone, so couldn't see the person at all. And as long as you do it in that frame of mind of, it's my best guess and then I'm going to test it out, and you run your ideas by the person afterwards, then it's perfectly possible to do it without being able to see your client. I don't particularly pay attention to eye accessing cues. Even as an NLP master trainer, I don't really pay attention to eye accessing cues that much unless they're really obvious. And that's partly because my eyesight's not that good. And so on screen, I don't always see where people's eyes are going. So for me, being able to pay attention to language is really helpful. Mary's put the links in. Could we compare lab profile results with some of the popular profiles? I'm not quite sure what that question means. Moen, are you still there? Okay.
Yes, yeah. I just like to know that I am a MBTI practitioner.
Yeah.
So, and I also coach. So I like to put in perspective how I can use this in coaching. So my question is, can you compare this lab profile with some of the popular assessments or psychometric tools?
Okay, I understand. Yes. So I'm also a Myers-Briggs practitioner, and I did part of my degree looking at personality profiling. So I feel qualified to talk about this. So the lab profile is not a personality profile. It profiles how you get motivated and how you become productive in a particular context. So a personality profile looks at kind of who you are, and some of the profiling, if they're a type profiler, they put you into a category and say you're an example of this type of person. Others are more trait based, so they'll say you've got this combination of traits, but they're basically saying this is who you are. The lab profile is saying this is how you are in this situation. And if we break it down and we look at somebody's lab profile in different facets of work, you find that a person will have a different profile depending on what they're doing. So, for those of us that run our own businesses, we do a very wide range of jobs. So, my lab profile, my preferences and what motivates me and how I work at my best when I'm doing this kind of thing, when I'm presenting something I'm interested in to a group of people, my lab profile is really different right now than it will be on Friday when I put my finance director's hat on and I have to do my business admin and balance the books in preparation for a meeting with my accountant. Yeah. So every time we kind of switch tasks, we switch contexts, we bring different patterns into play. So the other thing about the lab profile is that it recognizes that we're all capable of doing something different from the norm. That while we may have habits about the way that we go about doing things, there are times when we just don't do those things. Yeah. So you know, if you know somebody's Myers-Briggs profile, and you know which type they are most closely related to, then if they suddenly start behaving in a way that's out of character, Myers-Briggs doesn't really help you that much with that. I mean, yes, we've got all the in the grip stuff that will tell you about, what somebody does when they're stressed. But if they're not stressed, but they're just not doing what they normally do, then where do you go? But the lab profile still enables you to make sense of a person's behavior, even if it's different from what you're used to. Does that help, Moin? It's gone. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I think in that case we're done. It's just gone 2 o'clock. Lovely to see you all. Thank you very much for joining me today. There will be a replay, so look out for that coming into your inbox or into your LinkedIn messages, depending on which way you signed up for the event. And as ever, drop me a line if you want more information, if you think you'd like to come and do the training, or you'd like me to do your profile, give you all these lovely insights about who you are and how you are. And once again, thank you very much to Jane for giving us your time today and being willing to be my guinea pig. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.